Welcome back to Local Decision 2020. I'm Rusty Ray. We're joined now by State Senator Jerry Luton out of District 37, the incumbent DFL candidate. Thank you for being here.
It's nice to be here.
It seems like, well, we had you and Senator Benson here, I don't know, February or something.
February, March, yeah.
To preview the session.
Yeah.
How silly it seems now, because everything, it's not funny, obviously. Everything changed with COVID, it
Yes,
seems like.
Absolutely.
Do you
And the session keeps going.
That's right, and it's continued with the governor extending executive powers, and then the special sessions come in, and in those special sessions, a few things have happened with
Some. Yeah.
opposition of nominees and things like that, but also some business of the state. Has COVID pushed back anything that you really feel like the state should still be trying to handle here?
Yeah, you know, one of the big things is the executive powers of the governor, and the criticism, you know, that he continues to exercise those powers. And it bothers me to the extent that we meet on Zoom, you know, the various committees and so forth. But for example, let me just take one example. The Education Committee, K-12 Education, hasn't met since April, early May. And yet we had to have the decision on opening of schools. And of course the governor, regardless of what he does, he's going to be criticized for that because parents aren't going to be happy, legislators aren't going to be happy. But we had the chance there to come up with legislation that would have precluded the necessity of an executive order. Mm-hmm. And it's that type of thing that I think it's easy to sit back and criticize, and politically maybe it's better to do that, to be a critic, than to actually have to do work on something. But I wish that we as a Senate, both Republicans and Democrats, would have sat down and dealt with each of these issues and come up with our own decisions and give it to the governor. He still has veto power. But, you know, that we should have acted more responsibly, I think.
On the topic of education, I know you've spoken a lot, and you wrote, when you submitted some materials for us at northmetrotv.com, you talked a lot about education funding and
Yes.
again, continuing the push to continue to increase that funding and spending. How critical is that now, given all this other uncertainty?
Yeah, and you know, education and healthcare make up roughly 70% of the state budget. And I think, you know, there probably will be no new spending for education in the upcoming budget, the 21-22 budget, because we're facing a major deficit. Currently, the deficit's projected to be $2.5 billion by July of 2021, and then by July of 2023, there'd be another $4 billion deficit. The first one we can handle, we have budget reserves. That was what we call rainy day reserve, and we have had a torrential storm. So, you know, that'll take care of that, the period up until July of 2021. But moving forward, we are hoping that the federal government will come through with some funding for states, not only states, but cities as well, major cities. But hope is not a plan. And so we are looking at alternatives as to what to do at a time when people are not working, businesses aren't functioning fully. You don't want to be taxing them. So we're going to have to look at things like reducing tax loopholes, some of the money that was excluded from estate tax. There were, I think, 800 millionaires that received some $300 million in estate tax funding. You know, look at those programs. And I also chair the School Trust Lands Committee. I've got nearly a $2 billion reserve in that trust land. And it's possible the state could make negotiations with us, you know, to make sure that it's repaid over time. But that we could use things like that, the LCCMR trust, the school trust. You know, there is money there that we could use without having to resort to taxes.
And being prudent with that money, not and taking reserve, but certainly not exhausting the reserve to pay for these things. Am I right in thinking
I think
that?
we're going to come close to exhausting the reserves. I think, you know, the last projection we had there was a balance of like $280 million more than we had projected. But these are just projections. These aren't fixed numbers. And, you know, say we get a vaccine early next year, things start improving, business picks up, the whole dynamic will change. But we have to be prepared for the worst case scenario.
You mentioned healthcare a moment ago. Do you feel like COVID has exposed or shown perhaps opportunities in the state for healthcare spending and making things more available for Minnesotans, or making things perhaps not as much of a process in some cases?
It's, you know, it's highlighted certain things. First of all, that our hospitals are geared to make money off elective surgery more than anything.
Right.
And that's where their profits are. Right now they're losing because they're not doing as much in the field of elective surgery, which meant that we didn't have sufficient ICU beds immediately available. I think that's changed now. We have enough beds. In fact, we have a surplus of beds. Things like ventilators that we didn't have stored, we now have stored. And perhaps we've overreacted in those two areas, in ICUs and ventilators. We still have major problems in trying to get PPE, the personal gear equipment, the masks. My daughter, I have a daughter who works as a dental assistant. Mm-hmm. And their rules are that you're supposed to change masks after each patient because you're in their mouths, you know, basically. Well, they've changed the rule now so that you change your mask daily. And then it's, you know, put a mask in a bag after that day and you can use it again. But it's exposing not only my daughter and people in those professions, and not just dental assistants, but anyone in that type of a profession where you're dealing closely with people. It's putting them in a dangerous situation, as well as the clients, the people they're dealing with. Because you get a mask that someone else has, you know, projected on, and then you're right in the face of the next person.
So you say getting that equipment that's needed in the right hands.
Yeah, and getting it and making sure we have it available and stockpiled. And it's not something that we had planned on, and it's very difficult still to get the equipment to the degree that we need it.
Mm-hmm. We do not have a 2-hour special available to talk about the history and the saga that is Highway 65, but that continues to be a push for folks in your position to continue to work to find improvements, and it rests with the state, obviously, and the cities have a little bit of say, and Anoka County has a lot of say, but 65, we're talking to all the city of Blaine candidates, that's top of their list as well. Yeah. What are you looking for moving forward, even with all these difficulties and all the complexities of the COVID situation with the state?
Yeah.
Looking forward at 65, what comes next?
I've got a bill that I think is going to be a part of the bonding bill, and I'm anticipating that we go in possibly the end of this week or first part of next week, and the bonding bill can be brought forward. And as an aside, if it's not brought forward, it will be brought up immediately in January. So it's there. But I've got $1.5 million in that bill for the design of a bridge over 109th, over Central Avenue as a first step. And it would be a flyover bridge like the one we have here on Main and Central. And then at 99th, we've been working closely with the Department of Transportation on a new modular for traffic at that point. But we've been meeting regularly, I say for almost 3 years now, with the Department of Transportation. All of the city managers, chiefs of police who are concerned with traffic fatalities and things like that. Met council for the buses. You know, we've got buses that make stops at places on busy highways like 65 or 47, University Avenue, that really the people are standing right on the curb. And when it's winter, it's not very good. It's not only that you can slip, but you know, the snow plows come by.
You're in traffic,
There's just no place for them. So we're looking at all of that, and North Metro especially has not had adequate funding over the years. 65 has more traffic than 35W, and yet 35W seems to get the attention because it's a major mover. But you know, if you're sitting at 109th waiting for 10 minutes to get across to the other side,
You know the pain.
You know
Yeah.
the pain, yeah.
Yeah. While we have you here, I do want to ask you about something in particular. And you mentioned a moment ago being a critic for critics' sake, perhaps. I don't feel like this was it. You were recently interviewed in the Star Tribune for your thoughts about some remarks that the president made.
Yeah.
The president was in Bemidji last week, and he spoke off the cuff about a lot of things, and he mentioned General Lee, of all things.
Yeah.
And the Civil War, and you, veteran service in Vietnam and in the Middle East, had some thoughts about that. And I only bring that up for this reason. You're here, I wanted to ask you about
Okay.
it. But an advocate for veterans,
Yeah.
how important is that? And being that voice, I don't feel like when I read the comments, I didn't feel like you were being just a Democrat. It was,
Yeah.
I'm a veteran, we have thoughts and we have opinions about this, and when issues come up or when discussion comes up, we have something to say about it. How important in your role is that advocacy?
It's very important. I'm the lead on the Veterans Committee, and if we're fortunate enough that the DFL takes control of the Senate, I'll be chair of the Veterans Committee. I'm the most senior enlisted person ever elected to state office in Minnesota. So as a command sergeant major, our responsibility is to look out for the health, morale, and welfare of the troops. And I can't let that go, even though I've been out of the service many years. I still feel that obligation to my fellow veterans. And the governor's comments were not only about those of us who have recently served, but what struck me is the 1st Minnesota was the unit that held Gettysburg, and they had 80% of their soldiers were killed. And I thought it was just extremely unusual. Nothing the president says surprises me anymore, but it's just unusual to be citing General Lee in Minnesota when he was the one who was in charge of the Confederacy and at a time when we had so many Minnesota veterans killed. And I know it bothers a lot of people. And there have been other comments, as you know, regarding people who were killed in the service or people who were buried in veteran cemeteries, that again, it never surprises me, anything the president says, because I see so much of what he says as being show business, and you have to entertain the crowd. But it's disheartening and it's hurtful for a lot of people.
I'll get you out of here on this note. You've been doing this a while. You've run for a variety of offices and held a variety of offices for a long time. What is it like being a candidate in 2020 with so much uncertainty?
Yeah.
Some people may not even want to answer the door because of distancing and COVID concerns. What's it like trying to get with people and talk with people about what they're concerned about?
It's really difficult. Fortunately, I have my email, my Senate email, and so I get up to 60 emails a day on issues, everything imaginable, all the problems that people are facing. I think for a lot of people, it's just expressing their frustrations. So I do have that as an outlet, but also I'm not going door to door knocking. And the reason is I'm not so much afraid of coming down with COVID myself, but I don't want to be going to one door and then spreading it from house to house to house. I think that's just the wrong thing to be doing this year. So I call people, and as we were mentioning earlier, it takes about 12 calls to get through to someone. People don't want to answer their phones anymore because they don't want to be sold some sort of a product, or they don't want to be asked where they stand on politics. So what I tell people is, if you don't want to be bothered by the political parties asking where you are, where you stand, vote now, because you come off the voter list and they no longer call you.
And that's different this year too. The volume of people voting early, that's also a part of this whole process.
Yes, yeah. My wife and I voted the first day after we got our ballots in, and I think a lot of people are going to do that. But for the sake of your own sanity, vote early, and you won't have all the phone calls. It'll be limited to the people that are trying to get you in an extended warranty or or to sell your timeshare.
The secret to a peaceful dinner hour.
That's it.
That's right.
Yeah.
Senator Newton, thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you.